been looking for a podcast to help you transform your physical and mental? One that'll shoot you straight between the eyes with truth and no BS, helping you have the right mindset to accomplish things, the iron will and fortitude to follow through with what you say you're going to do. No excuses. Mark owns martial arts schools, and after 30 years, he has some real insight for real talk, real life, real conversations, motivational, fitness, self-defense, weight loss, live from the Great 1-8. This is Real Talk with Mark Cox.
Right. We live now, Doc. How are we doing this morning? Oh, well, it's not morning. It's evening. I usually do these things in the morning. My bad.
I'm doing good, man. How are you doing?
Good. I'm doing awesome. How's the weather out where you're at?
It's kind of cool, a little chilly. Not great weather like the West Coast.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Today, they say it's going to get kind of cold for us coming up on Thursday. We'll get this rainy cold. Right now, it's it's a cool 75. Sun shining. So, typical California day. We got Daniela on already. Emilio's on, saying hi to you.
Family?
So it's good. It's good. So listen, I'm super excited. We get to have this conversation today. I'm looking forward to having my audience meet you. So before we get going, guys, my name is Mark Cox. If you haven't been listened to me before on the show, my show is called Beyond the Mat. And today I got Dr. Oliver Reid with us, and I'm just going to read his bio to you guys, and we're going to just jump into this today, okay? We're thrilled to welcome Dr. Oliver Reid to our podcast. He's a dynamic figure whose work spans across multiple domains, including motivational speaking, entrepreneurship, authorship. Dr. Reid is not only a revered pastor and teacher, but also an esteemed minister known for his impactful contributions in various communities. As a multi-bestselling, award-winning author and speaker, he has harnessed his expertise to serve as a willing coach, ghostwriter, helping countless individuals bring their stories and ideas to life. We welcome you to the show, Dr. Reid. It's good to have you here, bud.
It's good to have you, man. I'm so excited to be on here. So happy to be with you, man, Mark.
Yeah, man, I'm so bummed. This last men's get-together you had, I was like, man, that looked like some fun. I could have had some fun doing that.
Man, it was epic, man. Every time we get together as men, it's like you never know what's going to happen, but you know something great's going to happen. And we're there for the next day every time. Well,
it's funny, being that you're a Christian man also, and we have, you see I'm bald right now, right?
Yeah.
We have a family friend that I've known. Matter of fact, her husband worked for me when he was a teenager. They have martial arts school, and she's battling leukemia. She shaved her head the other day. So 3 of us did that live yesterday on the mat for her in solidarity and say, hey, we got you. And so, watching you guys in the impactful wedge you have with God, I just know God's on the move, and he's there to wreak havoc over the demons and Satan, and here to give us blessings, man. So it was fun to watch everybody kind of get into that yesterday. It looked like you guys are not yesterday, the week or so ago when you guys were I think you were at your home. Was this all at your house? You were doing this?
We had some folks at my house. We rented out an Airbnb property nearby, maybe 20 minutes away. So some people were at my house. Some people crashed at my house the day before, and then we went over to the Airbnb. Man, I want to commend you just for your heart and even shaving your head on behalf of that individual battling leukemia. And we're going to keep her in prayer.
Yes, she's going to, I told her, I spoke with her when I was in the hospital here last, a few months back. I had this pancreatitis. I went in the hospital. I was doing some training, and then I just wasn't feeling well. It ends up being pancreatitis, which really sucked. But I had the same amount of prayers coming to me, man. I told the doctor, the doctor says, you're kind of healing now quickly. And I said, I'm going to be out of here before my son's graduation. I can just feel it. Right. I said, I can't explain it to you. I can just feel that I'm being healed right now. I said, I don't know if you're a believer or not, but then again, I really don't care if you're a believer. I just know what I'm feeling. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I get that. So we'll keep her. I told her that we have a group of men that is get behind this and watch it, because God will get all the glory anyway. So that's what we're going to do. But yeah, I look a little bit different now that I'm but I rock it pretty good. I'm like, man,
you look pretty good, man. I knew there was something different, something edgy. You had the sexiness coming through. I didn't know what it was.
But I'll tell you what, even though she shaved her head, she looks better than all of us with no hair. I told her, I said, man, beauty doesn't need hair. That's just the way it goes. You know, it was awesome. Well, let's jump in a couple things. I know. So for those that don't know, that I'm actually under Dr. Reid's tutelage on an anthology we're getting ready to release, right? Called Dear Younger Me.
Yeah.
I got to be one of the authors in that. I sent in my chapter, and I thought really hard about that. But let's talk about this, Doc. You since you do a lot of having people write their books and ghostwriting and all that kind of stuff. What does it look like for you? The difference with an anthology and a book. Why don't we explain that to our listeners real quick?
Yeah, a book. Let's start with a book first. A book is like, it could be so many different genres, so many different topics. It can be fiction, which is something made up. It could be a bio, something real, autobiography, just different things. It's more work. I would put from a standpoint, it's a lot of effort to just have one body of work from one individual. So a singular book, or whatever that may be. The authoritative book, it could be so many different genres or so many different styles of book. So that's just you're owning it, wherever it is, one author. But let's move to the anthology or collection of stories, or vision books, I like to call them, or collaborative books, is where people can then write a particular chapter, like this piece of the puzzle, and it can be one book. So people who, are overwhelmed a lot of times with saying, hey, I got to write this whole entire book about my life or a story or whatever it may be, narrative, novel, whatever it may be. I like anthologies and those group collective collaborations, because they allow you to write a bite-sized piece with people who share the common vision of the book. And before you know it, you have a book in 1,500 to 2,500 words or a chapter, and you can break that down to bite-sized pieces. And I like it for another fact that the project that we're both a part of, we'll be able to push each other. So once you read somebody's chapter, it may resonate, but somebody else's chapter will also resonate with an individual or a different population, but we're all in one book. So it kind of evens the playing field. So if you got 1 million followers, Mark, what you do, you're like brilliant in so many different ways. You've just been breaking stuff everywhere, right? I can still joy and piggyback off of your success as well, and people can introduce themselves to Dr. Reid in my chapter. So this is a great way to start for people who haven't written the book too, as well as if you haven't written the book for the first time, that's great. Or if you just have written books but you want more exposure, it's good to partner with people with the same goal.
That's so. And when I started this, so I started with Emilio the first time I wrote a book, right?
Yeah.
And this is how we got to meet at his event. Mm-hmm. I was so flustered in writing a book. Oh my goodness. I knew I had a lot of these stories because I speak a lot about them, and I've had these life events that's happened to me, and how do I share them? Mm-hmm. Sometimes I wished I had an anthology to start it, right? But I jump in full bore with this book writing, and then I needed some help writing. So the ghostwriting thing, I always felt, to me, I was like, well, that means it doesn't feel like it's my book anymore, right? So, but man, I was mistaken on what that was. It's you and I having a conversation like this, and me going over these stories, and then you have somebody that knows how to articulate what you're saying. And then, of course, you get to, hey, this doesn't sound too, because I remember writing my book, I was like, oh man, when I went through the divorce part, I told her my whole story. And when I read it back, I'm like, ooh, we got to edit that out, because this is just going to breed, and this is not, we can't do this. And so it was a great way for me to help get through that. But all these anthologies and stuff now that I've done a couple of them now. Now it's I did spiritual fitness,
Mm-hmm.
and now this one with you, and I got another one, Born to Risk, another one in the works. And it was nice to do a bite-sized thing because I can concentrate on one thing.
Yeah.
Right. One thing, right? What the younger me. Now there's a lot of lessons in younger me, but what I ended up doing is writing a letter to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I did it. I said, you know what? I'm going to write a letter to myself, what I would talk, what I would say, and stuff like that. So that's how I went about this anthology with you, in which I totally enjoyed it. It was fun. So we're looking forward to see what I don't know how your how I'm looking forward to seeing how you bring all this out, you know, how you market it and do all that kind of stuff. So we're in that phase. But it says you have this unique for writers to help them write.
Yeah.
Called M.I.L.K, right? What is it that makes yours unique? What is that makes it unique?
Man, I love that question. I love Emilio, Daniela. They're really amazing in that space. And we talk about this a lot, how even though you can be doing the same thing, you can definitely have your own secret sauce, right? And so M.I.L.K stands for 4 things, and I'll just kind of briefly go over them. But I always tell people that, you hear me say this a lot, McDonald's is not worried about Ruth Chris, even though they all sell beef. Both of them sell beef. They're not worried about it. They have their own population, they have their own target audience, and then they have what I like to say, they have their own sauce, right? So sauces, I always say, is the solution. S is for solution. They all have their own solution. They solve different things, right? I can't go to McDonald's and ask for Ruth Chris prime rib steak. They're gonna say we don't specialize in that, right? I can't go to Ruth Chris and say, hey, give me a 5-piece nugget, 6-piece nugget. You know, they're gonna say we don't do that. All right, but at the end of the day, they all sell food. Now, so they solve something, which is the S.A. is the audience. They have their particular audience. They have their own unique way of doing it. C, they have their own creative juices. The entrees is what that creativity is. And we all have our own creativity. And then E, they know how to execute. All right. So milk, 4 things is the messaging. So when I start working with somebody who is going to write a book, you know, there's so many people who say they're going to write a book, and some people come to me at different phases. Some come to me at a place where they are saying, I have the book written. Some people come to me with nothing. Some people have an idea or outline. But either way, I always say to them, the first thing I want to start with them is M. M is the messaging in milk. You remember this, Mark? I'm sure you heard it back in the day when we look at people and they say, hey, this person is really milking it. Like that dude is really milking it. He's not heard, or she's just really milking it. Well, shouldn't we really milk our story? So the fact of the matter is you should milk your story. Like right now, I'm sitting here with the iPhone. Steve Jobs was really great with milking the iPhone. He would give you an iPhone 1. They would, in their marketing, just change maybe a pixel on the camera, iPhone 2, and you'll pay another $1,500 to get the iPhone 2. Then you keep going. Now they're at 15. I'm still stuck at 12, and I'm trying to catch up because they are constantly giving you the same thing with a little better features. They are milking it instead of just getting the one phone. Everybody, a lot of times, I get this a lot of times with writing their story, they want to write their whole story. And I'm telling you, hey, one of the things I always tell people, you don't have to finish to be finished. You can put it in a volume. You can put it in a short story. It doesn't have to be this long, drawn-out thing. So M is the messaging. So I get people all the time, Mark, they come to me with a story, but they don't know who the book is for. I wrote this book, and I don't know who it's for. So M is we work on your messaging to realize what your mess is. What is your mess age? What is it that you are really trying to solve? Then we move to I. Once you got your message, we can move to the I, which is implementation. So many people got great messages, but they never implement. You know this in the martial arts world, business world. You got people that want to be champions, but they never go to practice. They never execute. They never get the foundation. So I is that implementation. Well, now let's implement. L is then linking it all together. Now that you have this message and you implemented it, how do you link it together? I help people not be used car salesmen or used book salesmen, right? Some people just want to show up on their release day and think they're going to be a bestseller and they're going to sell millions of books. But I talk to them about how do you link that on your social media pile? How do you link that on videos? Every part of your business. Are you talking about a book prior to the release? Because nobody wants to be the politician knocking on the door the day of trying to get votes. All right, so should be already talking about it, building an audience. And then K is the knowledge. Now, this brother is amazing because the knowledge is what people will pay and invest for. That is what you solve. So it's good to talk about your life story, but somewhere inside of your book, you should be talking about what you solve in business, what you solve in life. Because if you can solve a problem, people will pay you for the solution.
I think I want to hit on that, Doc, because I speak on this about myself quite often. You know, I'm not sure were you at Emilio's when I smacked some bricks down? Were you there when I did that or not? Were you at his event when I broke bricks and stuff on stage?
Yes, I was there right there.
Okay.
I had my mouth open.
Right.
I was
so,
like, wow.
Right. So I talked before I did that because I talked about, you know, just my ego was so engaged back when I was a young guy, right? Trying to win these events. And then I lost this event to a guy in a wheelchair. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I will never forget it. I was so angry, first of all, that he even was in the division because it's hard to beat a disability, number one.
Mm-hmm.
But in then martial arts, all the years I've been doing it, people with disabilities do amazing things anyway. It's just like, I you know, what they really aren't a disability. So we go through this and he ends up winning this. And I was just so taken. I was angry and sad. I was all kinds of emotions. And then I watched him do a speech. And he brings me in the speech and says, I want to thank Mark Cox. And I'm like, I'm sinking in my seat now because I was such a jerk. And I was like, oh, my goodness. And then he tells his story that he was hit by a truck and his blood transfusion had AIDS in it and he was dying. It wasn't my year to win a championship. That was his year. That's now marked down for his family to see and all that kind of stuff, right? And I was so taken back. My humility just completely changed from my competition.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have a competitive edge, and I'm still, you know, when I meet the enemy face to face, man, I'm ready for war, but for sure. But in the winning and the losing, it's the same face. I don't, you know, and so the humility really got to me. That life thing got to me. So what you said here is, the knowledge in the book that you need to tell people, even with Emilio, even on the stages that I've been talking on, I've never talked about my wins too much. I talk a lot about my losses. And I've never talked about that. I can help somebody do a martial arts and they can make money. I haven't told anybody I've got an organization that's underneath me where all the schools are making a good amount of money. I've never done that because I just felt so cocky on stage. You know, I felt so vain. I just didn't want to do it. So I think when other people are listening to this, I get this brought up quite often, is it's okay to talk about your wins, your successes. Why don't you elaborate on that so other people can hear from you what that looks like?
Man, I love that, and I've been a part of that. I would say a victim of that, not really wanting to really toot my horn in the areas of where God has blessed us to solve. I'm working on a book right now. I work on about 3 or 4 books simultaneously. I release at least 3 to 4 books a year since 2010, following the same system of this milk writing system. So not only do I help people write books and work with people on anthology projects, I do my best to stay sharp, and I write for therapy and release more than selling books, right? And one of the things I want to tell people watching this right now, that I encourage my clients not to just write a bestseller, but become that book that you want to write. Become that book you want to write. And I always say it's great to talk about your life and what you've overcome, but you have to really shift to, especially business owners. Let me talk to entrepreneurs, speakers, and coaches. I did a lot of research on you, Mark, and just watch what you do. You're a guy that leads with certain people will say, okay, just martial arts, but you do a whole lot more. You lead, you pour in, you got organizations that you help develop. And what I'm telling anybody that's an entrepreneur on this platform right now listening, to answer your question, if you have not written a book about what you do already, it is one of the biggest travesties, you know, because I feel like if you are in business, you already got processes, procedures, SOPs, systems and processes. You know how to do whatever. You fell on your face. You have traumatic experiences in business that people will pay you for. It's not all about money. And I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about pay you an opportunity to help someone else, give you an opportunity financially, Not if it's not even financially, relationships that you can connect with simply because people are trying to do what you've already done. Let me say it again. People are trying to do what you've already done. And so when they're Googling for your book, they can't find you because you didn't write the book about your success because you're like, oh, there's nothing. And we don't celebrate the wins and put it in the book, right? I always put it, the most successful individual that walked the planet Earth is God, Christ, right? If you believe it or not. You can believe or not, but the best-selling book in the world, the number one book in the world, the number one anthology in the entire world is the Bible, written by dead men.
Mm-hmm.
But they took their stories about their failures, their success, and I say milk all of it, right? So if you're doing that, man, just think we didn't have the book of Job to read, right? Somebody who lost everything, and we got to a position. What about you out there as an entrepreneur, speaker, coach? Whatever, and you didn't really tell the story. So we know you got the 7 figures now, but what happened when you didn't get approved for the loan, when you were bankrupt? Well, just the story you shared about being in that contest and what it meant to you. It helps me deal with pride or a situation that I may be going through. And so if you don't leave those nuggets behind you in business, so if you're watching and you haven't written the business book on what you do, right? You need to be able to do that because you can leave a trail for somebody else who's coming through the same lane as you.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's good. I struggle with that. I've changed the dynamics now on stage because my next I do have a book that's in, I've got the cover, I've got everything. It's called, and I've got most of it written, but this one's called Black Belt Tactics in Life and Business. This is more the tactical thing on how I've taken the principles of what being a martial artist is and how they coincide with business. How, like, even jujitsu, when somebody's trying to choke you out or there's no one here coming to run to help you. That's all on you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You got to figure a way out. You either tap out or you figure ways out. And in business, every day you're dodging and ducking business punches and hooks and everything else. So that's my next one. So I really wanted to get your take on that because I try and tell everybody now, everybody should be writing books at this point. Okay.
Yeah.
I've tried to get every one of my martial arts school owners. I've got some bad boys, man. I got guys that are combat Marines that, that have stories of just stuff that would just be mind-blowing to people that you think you have it bad. This is my thought process. This is how I thought under pressure. And when you're under pressure and how you think, you go back to how you trained. And if you train well, that's what happens. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
I think that's powerful.
Yeah. I think that, I don't know if you're on that same belief. I mean, do you believe that everybody has a book waiting in them?
Yes. I firmly believe that every person in the planet Earth has a book in them because they have a story. I've worked with individuals who were blind. I worked with individuals who had handicaps, disabilities, dyslexic, and they were still able to have a story in them. And I think the biggest things that people think is because they have a story in them, they have to write it. Going back to your point, there's gifted people. There's people that I work with that never write one word, but they tell their story to me with using what they have, which is their voice. And I always say that speaking is writing and writing is speaking. So I get a lot of people say, hey, Doc, I'm not a writer, I'm a speaker. I'm like, yeah, you're a writer. You just speak with words. You speak with words that write on the hearts of people. Now let's just translate that onto pages, right? So I believe that every person in the planet Earth has a story. It's just you have to figure out what means that you would use, what vehicle that you would use to bring this story. I like what you're talking about, linking in a creative way these tactics in jiu-jitsu with what happens in business. That's your secret sauce. Like what I'm saying is that you have to, and I get people who struggle because they're writing about what they're passionate about. So you got people trying to tell somebody else's story, Mark, because that's what's hot. Like, okay, let me jump over to crypto because that's a hot button item. And that's really not your passion. One thing about if you write the story about your life or what you really experienced, you're more passionate about it. It's one thing if I write about my friend's car who got hit, then I write about my car that got hit. It gets personal when it's my story, and I have a different passion because it is. Oh, this guy is really great. I appreciate what you doing, right? I recently went through a change of events in my life, Mark, to where I had to say, oh, I had a lot of sympathy for people who went through this. It's a total different ball game when it hits home for me, right? And so now I'm able to write about that. And I'm writing about a story that's going to be coming out this year that I never really shared because it hit home to me. So I always tell people, if you have trouble with writing, you really don't have a writing issue. You're just not writing about something that's passionate. Because if your finger is slammed in the door, you're going to move it. You're going to scream. You're going to have a passion for it. But if somebody else shut their finger in the door, you're like, hey, man, this idiot keeps shutting his finger in the door, right? But until you do it, you have a grace, you have a wherewithal, you have a tactic. So it's really you finding out in you what is your story. I say something all the time everywhere I go. I was in Jacksonville this past weekend. I shared it to a group of entrepreneurs. And I told them I would rather write my story while I'm alive than allow somebody to skim over the highlights when I'm dead. I'll say it again. I will write my story while I'm alive so that people won't have to skim over or make things up when I pass away. So my great-great-grandchildren, my daughter and son's children, right? Daughters, listen to this. They're going to be able to say, Dr. Oliver Reid is this way because I can pick up a book instead of having to ask 10 people about what my life was. So that's how important it is. I can't tell you how many funerals I sat in where people just flip over the back of the obituary and read this paragraph, and that's it. Right. And we know that there was more to that individual person's life than what was on that paper. So guys, write your story while you're alive so people won't have to figure out who you really were. Write your testament.
Yeah, that's so powerful, Doc. I try and tell everybody that now. You know, I'm trying to even get lucky for me. Both my folks are still alive.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to get them to even, I mean, you're looking at people that got married at 18 and 16. My parents did.
Yeah.
Right. Married in 1959. And I was born in 61. My parents were 18 and 16. So I have these, and they're both still alive right now. And so they went through, that the whole 50s and the 60s and what that was like. And getting the stories from them is awesome. I've told my parents both too. I said, hey, we can do this. You can do something together.
Yeah.
And have a ghostwriter help you guys put your stuff on paper. And so I keep struggling with that too. That's definitely an important thing for sure. So on your books, when you're writing your books, what's the best advice and we're going to move on to another topic, but I want you to give people's best advice on how to get past their fear of what writing a book really is. That it's really not as difficult as people seem to think it is.
Yeah. Man, I think the biggest thing is with them is finding your communication style or your writing style with writing a book. Now I'm gonna give some people some cheat codes and people could charge and actually I do thousands of dollars for this, right? Basically, you have to realize that maybe you're not a physical writer, that you're not gonna sit and write it down on your tablet or you're not gonna type it out. Then you probably need to get with the coach. And I tell people this all the time. I wish it took me 10 years to write my first book. And I really wish I would have hired myself the first time because I was trying to do it myself, with AI and everything out there. Everybody, you can just use AI and you can just do all these other things. And yeah, you can get it up there, but positioning and how you're going to work. And is it really your soul? Like I always tell, AI is a great tool, but you still got to feed it and it doesn't have a soul. It's only going to put in what you put in, right? It'll give you some more stuff, but your true story, right? So basically I tell people, face your fear and become fearless. So knowing a lot of times people, it's not the fact that you're afraid to tell your story. You just don't know how. So finding out a person that can help you tell your story. I always say that if you can't start, always start with the fear. If you can't start with the fear. I say, hey, I'm afraid to write my story. I'm not talking about what I'm afraid of right now, but I'm still writing because sentences lead to paragraphs. Paragraphs lead to pages. Pages leads to chapters. Chapters lead to books, right? And so if you can just put a word down, and you can start writing it. Find somebody, but also talk about the less restrictive thing, the least restrictive thing. Okay, I'm afraid of this because I don't know, and really face it. Also, don't edit your work. I always tell people, dump it out. Don't try to make it make sense. Sometimes you'll get chapter 3 before 1. Sometimes you get 8 before you get 6. Quit trying to like dissect it in your mind, trying to figure out this book. That's why you hire a professional, somebody that can help you sort out all of this stuff. Talk about your real feelings as they come. Other thing I would talk about your pain points. Talk about things that's going to really make you talk. If it's, we don't really have a problem a lot of times talking about the surface stuff. That's why you hire a coach. I get on a call with a lot of people and they talk very surface, but it's certain ways, and I'm trained to ask those questions that before they know it, they're talking in a way where they probably wouldn't have written it out, but they're verbalizing it. So maybe you're a verbal communicator, a verbal writer that needs to talk it out, right? Maybe you need to have an outline because you're very structured and you need to be able to see the outline, but you don't know where to get started. So I always say, find out what jogs your memory, realize what happens, and just pour it out, dump it out. I know it's going to look crazy because I know people want to write and hold on to their story. You can't write and hold on to your story. I get people all the time, well, you know what? I really want to share this traumatic experience, but I'm wondering what my mom's going to say. I'm wondering what my cousin's going to say. I'm wondering what somebody's going to say. And I'm saying, hey, is this your truth? That's why they call it his story. Is your story, is your account of that story or her story. And I think if you filter yourself and always being afraid of what somebody else is going to say, you live in a world that's not really true and really real. And the only person that suffers is you. So I have people all the time, they write their story, and I'll give this a piece of advice. When you're writing your story, working with a professional, working with someone, and you are happy with that story, the number one mistake I get, and I see, Mark, is that people will then share that book or share that story with their friends and family and colleagues. And before you know it, they get this advice. And before you know it, it's not their story anymore. And I'm going to give you a very powerful point, and I hope you catch this. Be careful of what people envision about your vision. Let me say that again. Be careful of what people envision about your vision. I can't tell you, Mark, and I'm sure you've been in this position, how I've went and told people I was excited about a vision I had, something I've written, book. Before I know it, it's like, well, you know what I envisioned? I don't know why. You shouldn't have said that right here. Maybe somebody get offended. Before I know it, if I'm not careful, what they envision becomes division or division because it separates me from my focus that God has given me. And now I'm trying to work on how it's going to filter to everybody to where before I know it, my story is watered down. Everybody else is happy, but I'm sitting here not being true to myself. So I always tell people when I'm working with them, let's get everybody involved that's a decision maker in your life, if that's the case, so that we don't get this product that's finished and then you send it to somebody else and I can't tell you how many times they have to go back and rewrite it. But when you start to rewrite all of these things, we're not talking about grammar and punctuation and the structural content of your paper or your book. I'm talking about what was your real heart? What was the real meaning? What was your great purpose? What was your inspiration? Hold that. And if you were fearing something, face it. Because I realized something when I was a young kid that I'll share right here. And a lot of people face this in their book writing. I was terrified of big dogs. I'm still kind of not their friend. And I see them, I'm kind of like, okay, let's see how we can work together. Right. But when I was growing up, I grew up in the project. So we did, we had pit bulls, all these crazy things. And so I remember one day it was time for me to go to school. My mom was she's a bad woman, bad lady. Right now, Mark, her hands are still bigger than my hand. I'm a grown man. My mom's fist is bigger than mine. So she said, it's time to go to school. And I heard this loud, ferocious dog barking in the hallway. And it was only one way out. And I said to myself, man, I don't know. Do I get beat by my mom or do I get bit by this dog? I don't know. I don't want either one of them. So I'm sitting in there and something said, you idiot, look through the peephole. So I'm looking through the peephole. I look through the peephole, Mark, and I look out. It's a puppy, but it was inside of a hallway. And it is barking, and the reverberation and the echo made this giant thing. When it was a puppy, I could just step over it. I said, oh, wow. As I got older, I realized that's life. A lot of times we're thinking that this big dog is barking and ferocious in the hallway. That when we tell people our real story, that we're going to get this rejection. And if we tell what happened to us, nobody's going to accept us. And you don't know that the liberation of telling your story frees others. Y'all catch that? The liberation of telling your story frees others. So just like that dog in the hallway, that might be the thing you're afraid of, but look to the people, get a different perspective, get a different area of view of what's going on. And you'll realize it's not as big as it seems anyway. Face your story.
That's so powerful, man. All of that is right in line with just life in general. I mean, people fear what they then, and to start with the fear. I like that. I might even use that, I think,
Yeah.
because I hear this every day, right? Well, I'm kind of fearful to step on the mat.
Mm.
Well, then let's face that fear. Just step on the mat. Let's go. Let's just do that part first. I like that. I like that a lot. That's really good, Doc. Really enjoyed that. Well, let's talk about how you grew up. So, did you go to college right out of high school, or did something that you did later in life? So, how did you grow up to go and to be kind of where you're at today, where you're one of the top coaches in writing? You speak now and all that. So let's dissect how your life and how you got there.
Yeah, I was raised in an inner city project by my mom, who rejected by my father, abused by my stepfather. It's a long story, but experienced a lot of pain. 1999 was in a place of depression. Didn't know. My freshman year of college, I went to college because I had a girlfriend at the time who told me her father said, "Listen, if you want to date her, you're gonna have to make something of yourself." And so that's it. I didn't even, where I grew up, I didn't see college grads, and we had drugs and violence and all different kind of influence. So I'm sitting there like, hey, I'm not going to school, but that particular relationship led me to college. And after having a suicidal breakdown in 1999, where I tried to end my own life, so a lot of my writings is, like I said, therapeutic. I never stumbled to really be a writing coach. I just found this passion that I kept falling back into with writing. Even when I was a kid, I ran writing contests. When I was, the hip hop came out, I became a rapper. I was writing. I was always doing something. And so I went to college and then barely graduated undergrad. My last semester, I took 21 hours. I took 7 classes, 7 3-credit classes, because I knew, Mark, I was the kind of dude that if I didn't do it in 4 years, I was not going to do it. So I remember getting there, and by the skin of my teeth, I've never told this story, but by the skin of my teeth, I am literally, my mom had to come up to my computer class. I waited till the last semester to take a computer class, and it was at another junior college. I'm a graduate of Winston-Salem State University, and so I took a class at like this place called Forsyth Tech. And believe it or not, computers was not my thing at the time, and I was like, let me type the way I want. I peck. I don't need to, I don't have all these things that, these different things that goes on. Let me just be able to just do whatever. And I remember the teacher gave me a D. You couldn't have a D to graduate. So my mom was basically like, I'm coming up there because, like, I'm hot, like, this is an elective. This is not even this is an elective. And I'm sitting there with this elective, and by the skin of my teeth, they worked something out. I did a sign, I passed it. So now I went on to have 7 degrees, but I laugh at that first degree because, first of all, I wasn't even going to college. I barely passed college. And then I developed after that to go back and get my master's, my bachelor's in theology, bachelor's in science, all those different things, in doctorate in counseling, the different things that I really have now grown to achieve. But my life it's a collection of this well thought out plan by a creator. And I'll tell people who may be watching this right now, you can't choose your family. You can't choose. I wish you could edit, and I would have had my life in a better position. But everything I've experienced in life has been a catalyst to my metamorphosis. It has really been a springboard to where I am now, right? And so I look at all of these things as almost like this well-written chapter of my life that were interconnected by pain and promise and purpose and persistence and failure and success, all of it working together like this blended soup, right, at grandma's table, right? And I feel like now I'm able to identify with so many people. I've been able to go around the world. I've been able to share in a way that if I had not had these things that happen in my life. So my background has really prepared me for the battleground of life, to know what to do when you're up, know what to do when you're down, and you treat everything the same. I want to tell people who are watching this, put compliments and criticisms all in the same bucket, all in the same bowl. I've learned that people will say you're the greatest thing since sliced bread one day, and they'll come and say, hey, we don't like your writing the next day. You have to know.
That's true. So true, man. That's some really true statements there for sure. In college so did you go and get, well, what's your doctorate in, first of all?
Yep. My doctorate is in counseling.
in counseling?
So definitely I went back and, I had so many different things that happened to me. I was very inquisitive about how the brain works and how the mind works. And so and in my faith. So I kind of, my undergrad was in history and sociology. So then I got a bachelor's in theology, a master's in theology, bachelor's in counseling. And then I got all the way up to a doctorate in counseling. So I am a certified counselor as well. So a lot of times I help people with therapeutic writing. I can't tell you how many calls I'm on, and people it turns into a counseling session, and they're like, "Wow, I didn't know that, doc." But I was like, "Yeah." In the background, I do counseling, right? And so from that standpoint, it's been a great combination. Because so many people are traumatized and they can't get past the trauma, and they can't get past that. And a lot of times, if they can write about it, it helps relieve that trauma.
Yes, that's yeah, definitely 100%. Isn't that weird too? I tell everybody that even though I teach martial arts, I'm more 65% counselor than I am a martial arts teacher. I've
Yes.
had many men come in here crying on my shoulders about divorce or addicted to porn or whatever it is that they're
Yep.
struggling with, and anger. And you're in my world, especially type A personalities like myself and highly competitive people. I don't know, man. We struggle with anger. You know what I mean? And if it's not put together right, boy, it comes out in a bad way. All right. So it comes
Yes.
out in a really, really bad way. Then you get, I didn't really have drinking issues, but man, you put drinking and anger together, whew, man. I thought, when I was going through my divorce, it was really traumatic, and I'd been married for 20 years.
Wow.
And then this divorce comes in, and, my personality doesn't, my baby girl is only 3 at the time. She's 22 now, right? It's been a long time ago, but I remember different men coming in, and I'd be like, there's no way that another man is going to, intercede for me. I can tell you that for a fact. And that battle, I finally said, "Hey, I got to get some anger management under my belt, because I don't have ways outside of." And sometimes getting on the mat or going to fight class isn't your best therapy for that, because all you're doing is beating the snot out of whoever is in front of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I still catch myself with that. Even today, I still struggle with it. Having a bad day or being trolled pretty hard online the other day, right? I'm in class and I'm just like, I am fit to be tied. And a couple of my partners there, they got the brunt end of that. So unfortunately for them, but after I was done, I was like, oh man, I got to get back to this. But when I was in that counseling, a lot of people there were told by the court they have to go. I went in. And so I wanted to ask you about this. I want to make this into the thing about, I'm interested in men's health anyway, but in there, man, there's some powerful men in there that when they got angry, man, I mean, I was like, wow, I'm on the low end of the tier here, man. These guys are on a whole nother level of anger, right? Throwing people against the wall, and their kids or whatever. I was like, oh my goodness. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, because without that class, I'm not sure what I've, when we're one-on-one, I'll tell you some more dark things on my, and how God kind of intersected it. But when I watched all you guys with all the guys and stuff like that get together, I want to talk a little bit about how you bring the guys together and what you see from men today. Do you see, in your group of guys, do you see anger? Do you see resentment? I mean, what are you seeing in our men today that we can start helping them a little bit?
Yeah, one of the things and I read several books about this, and they're called manhandle. When you hear the word manhandle, immediately we think of what a man is doing to a woman, right? We think about men, but we don't talk about how men have been manhandled for centuries, for years, since the beginning of time. And then a lot of times it's not a physical manhandling. They have been manhandled by words. So, basic things, when you start looking at and reeling back and looking at men, one of the things I realized that have led me to kind of work with men is what I went through as a man. Being a product of divorce, being a product of different things, being a product of abuse, being a victim of society in so many different ways. I realized this key point, that men feel what they don't say, and they say what they don't feel. Most of the time, 90% of the time, you ask a man, hey, Mark, how was that match? Oh, it was cool. You just got beat the snot out of everything, but you're not going to say, I feel rejected. I feel lost. I feel like a failure. You're going to say, oh, it was cool. Woman asks her husband, how was work? You had the day from Hades in the underworld. Like basically everything happened. He's going to say, oh, it was cool. And then that wife's going to say, okay, cool. She doesn't know him. She's not watching body language or posture or being cognitive of him. She's going to say, well, baby, can you pick up the milk? And Jesse needs some Pampers. And can you pick up such and such from Little League practice? And next thing you know, he's doing all these things. And he comes home and he goes to the basement and doesn't say anything, right? Because he really is not being heard. So I see men functioning a lot of times in two emotions. That is either anger or happy. They're like, I'm happy or jovial or anger. But there's so many emotions. It'll be funny if I told you today, if you said, hey, Oliver, how are you doing right now? And I say, hey, I'm feeling melancholy. Right? You're like, what? But that is a feeling. So most men is like angry, upset, or they're like, real cool, laid back, or they're just, we don't use all of the different things. But if you look at our counterparts, women have a multiple array of emotions that they embrace, that they're in, right? But we're just stuck in either anger, aggression, whatever. So one of the things I notice is all of that people are screaming, Mark, and I've been one of them, screaming with their mouth closed. They are screaming. Men are screaming loud through their behavior, their actions, their posture, their breathing habits. We surround ourselves with stuff and trophies. I've won. We get in the room, we talk about nothing. We talk about stuff though. Hey, how, I just bought my wife the car, man. And my son just graduated top of his class. And, I just built a house. You see the ring I bought my wife. That's stuff. How are you doing? Not about your job, how many meets you won. How are you physically doing? What I've seen is that, and so we created an environment, and it's been amazing. We had a conference, and hopefully you can be at the next one, man. I would love to get your input on this experience. But I've been doing this since 2013, just bringing men together. And at our last one, what I realized is that people were able to bring their dirt. We have a movement called He-Man Conference, right? And that I grew up, in the 70s where He-Man was popular, in the 80s.
Yeah, I know He-Man.
And so I'm like, hey, He-Man, but then God gave me a deeper perspective that he is greater as he that's in you than he that's in the world. It's not really us as men. It's who he really wants to be in us if we let him out of the inside and let him show on the outside. We have no problem putting God in the inside. The hardest part is letting him be shown in our actions, our character, and our abilities on the outside. And then we created a space, and I call it MUD, M-U-D-D, which is Men Under Divine Dominion, coming from Genesis, where we are all created from the mud. And so if I can encourage men, imagine it's giving them opportunity where you can bring everything you've done wrong in a non-judgmental environment. You can bring your dirt in a society that tells you to hide your dirt. You can come and talk about, hey, man, this is some things that I'm really struggling with. I'm really angry at. I'm not so good at. I got the 7 figures, but I have no peace. I got the beautiful wife, but I'm still addicted to porn. I'm addicted to whatever. And not be in a place where you feel like, okay, somebody's going to tell it. And we make sure we guard this with confidentiality statements. People have to sign this. We come in and we come as men with our dirt as well as celebrating the victory. So what I've saw in that is, wow. And by the time somebody opens their mouth, we're like, oh, I'm dealing with that same thing. Well, yo, bro, let me tell you. Like literally I had to cut them off, Mark. We were in Atlanta and I had to say, listen, guys, they had been there since 8 that morning. It was 11 that night. Of course, there was breaks and all that stuff. I had to tell them, like, guys, I'm paying rent. We got to get out of here. You had men that were just really pouring into each other. And I'm more of a facilitator than somebody who's dictating, right? I'm actually at a place where our last mud pop-up that we had, I didn't even know how vulnerable I was going to be. Those are the kind of environments it is. And I was very vulnerable with them. And some people were like, whoa, but it just started to break things off of other people. And I'm a firm believer that with men, there's certain things in men that only men can unlock. Right? I'm reminded, this is a powerful story. My stepdaddy, who was an abuser of me, right? He abused me from the age of 1 all the way up to 12 physically. And then from 12 to 16, 17, it became verbal because I got bigger then. So he knew he couldn't kind of tackle me as I started to get 5'11", and started to be just as big as him. Then it was a different thing. But I realized something. My mother said that it took her, she was trying to potty train me. I'll give you a simple illustration. She could not potty train me. My stepdad came home within a few hours. He went to the bathroom and he performed. She could teach me, but she could not demonstrate. Let me say that again. She could teach me. She could not demonstrate. He stood up, did what men do. I mimicked what he did, right? And even though he was abusive, I saw a pattern, something that I could relate to. And so this day and time, man, men need to see other men being vulnerable and being able to flow in vulnerability and being able to be comfortable, to be celebrated. Even in the mess, we celebrate men. So that's what we do. And it's been contagious and infectious. We're about to do it again in Miami in September. So it's going to be amazing.
I'd like to hit one of those, to be honest with you. I'd like to see what that's about, because in church there's a lot of things called life groups and stuff like that, and I'm not a big fan of them. I've been really hard on being around. First of all, I'm not going in with the couples and all that, and I'm going to talk about my problems and stuff like that. There's just absolutely no way that I'm doing it. I don't trust anybody enough to do it, right?
Yeah.
Then, so we would go to the all guys thing, but I'm not this kumbaya guy. You know what? I don't sing kumbaya, and we're gonna. It was always so hard for me. So, and the pastor is a black belt of mine. Since he's a kid, he's a really good communicator, great guy. He's always trying to get me. So he asked me, he goes, what happens if we do Bible Beatdown or Jesus and Jits and we lead that group? Yeah. And I said, if we can come into the studio where I can teach them how to fight and we can exchange some sweat and blood, there'll be a different bond with me, especially. So that's what we did. We did Bible Beatdown or Jesus and Jits. And at the end of 8 weeks, all those guys that wanted to fight in a cage, we put a cage up and said, okay, something you'd never be able to do again, but if you want to see that experience, we do it. And and we had some, the guys that come to that class are the ones that would probably hardly ever go into church anyway.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they're just struggling. But when I became their teacher and then their peer, we'd get on the mat and we'd start hitting each other and bleeding a little bit. I felt I had a bond there, but I still, Doug, listen to what you're saying. I still have a really hard time if I was just to sit around with a group of dudes and talk about things. See, I'm not. Well, see, you grew up in your 70s, so I'm 62. Right?
Yeah,
I'm 62 years old, and that generation, you want to talk about not talking? Yeah, everything's good every day. Everything's awesome. There is nothing wrong. But man, underneath is the Hulk. That's why I got the Hulk all over me, right? Because I'm always trying to suppress the beast, and he's always trying to come on out. So I want to make sure. Hey, man, Masada's saying she's hearing double voices. That's weird. I wonder if it's my mic she's saying. Mark, I think there's something wrong with my mic. It could be. Well, we're almost done now, so there ain't nothing I can do about it. We might, if it's too bad when I hear the playback, then we're going to go ahead and redo another one.
That's good. I need an excuse to do another one.
All right. So, I wanted to get your feedback on that because you said something really important there, right? There's a big confidentiality. Yep. Because when you leave those groups, hey man, I don't need females especially.
Yep.
I do not need that noise at all, right? So I was just wondering on how that is that something that you built into this, or how did you go about getting this?
Yeah, it's something I built in. I think a lot of it has been my experience in the counseling world. And one of the greatest compliments that I got from the conference recently in Atlanta was the men got up and said, "Man, I love this because this is not church." And I was like, "Good," because the church is inside of us, as we know. But the good thing is not a physical building. But what they were saying is this is not the normal, let's come to church and talk, and let's be in purpose group. I'm glad you brought that up because it's not that kumbaya moment. It is really, we get like most of the people that's coming around me now, Mark, as far as men, are ex-Marines, current Marines, people that have been in the Navy, Navy chiefs, military guys who fought in combat, right? They understand protocol, they understand fights, they understand pressure. But when the Spirit of God comes in a way of that confidentiality, because I tell people, if you're not confidentiality, it doesn't matter how anointed or called or well spoken you are. If people can't trust you with water, then we're not going to be able to do. If you come and spill your guts, and then I come home and tell my wife everything you shared, absolutely. Like my wife is not allowed in there, right? It's one of those things. Like she dropped off the food, she's gone. Love you, honey. Bye bye. She may be in photos that people may tag her, but she in the conference, we made sure. And we signed those waivers because you will be excommunicated from the group. It's not a threat, it's a promise. If you go out and you violate confidentiality and you talk about what's going on, that's the protection that we have. Because one thing about men, we've been talking about emotional intelligence as well. We as men need to quit acting so surprised when somebody tells us something. Right? We live in this world where everything goes. But when people try to come in and say, hey, I'm having an affair with my wife, or hey, I did this thing wrong, or hey, I cheated on my taxes. First thing we want to do is condemn, right? At the end of the day, we want to create an environment where, okay, it's confidential. We're going to get you help. We're going to provide you. You got to be willing to whatever. And then what I love about what happens in these meetings is not forced. It is one of those things where people just come, and I literally have to turn it off. Like literally, we were at the event this past weekend, well, 2 weekends ago. It was in the snow. People came from all over the country. Wasn't a lot of men. It was 12 brothers. They came from all over the country, flew in. It was snowing here. They were shoveling snow. Emilio came and shoveled snow, even in my driveway, right? And then we got to the Airbnb, and they didn't shovel. Emilio again, good brothers, shovel the snow there, and men were coming. It was like they wanted to be there. And that's the environment. And that's because they know with me and with all the men that are part of it, it is a us gathering. It's not an Oliver gathering. It's not a thing to talk about how we're going to make 7 figures. It's not a business boot camp. There's none of that. No selling. It is a place where you come and be able to speak your piece, and it's led by the group. There's a time we come and do whatever. And then you have authentic relationships that occur with men that have just a closer bond that they may share on another level that they might not share with the forum or even share with me. They're able to do it. And then we put it in action. We watched movies together. We did activities together. We prayed together. So it wasn't just this thing of you're going to come and get Sunday school. Because I'm a firm believer. I was in church, the subculture of the church, but I was depressed and nobody knew it. So I was 19 depressed, going to church every Sunday, and nobody knew that I was depressed until I attempted to commit suicide. So I understand the value of having these conversations. Like if I would have had that group of men I could go to and be supportive with, it was really that connection. So it is one of those things we see and we do. And everybody keeps saying, hey, man, we love it. When is the next one? And so those are the things that we want to do.
Once you meet together in face, are you guys also doing something online, or how is that going about?
Yes, we do a bi-weekly, just a prayer call virtually, and then we're going to build out to where we're going to be doing more trainings and different things that people might come and talk on emotional intelligence and group things. The goal is to do 4 pop-ups a year. So every quarter there'll be a physical pop-up, and we're going to be able to try to stream those now as well so that people can see those. But they're so intimate, we don't want to jeopardize the conversation being able to go viral. But we are putting some virtual stuff in place where we can meet. But we do now have every 2 weeks people from all over the world, they call in and just pray as men, and we just talk. So we're actually doing that. And then the pop-ups are going to rotate. So right now, second quarter, we're looking at either Atlanta or Kentucky. We have people out in LA, all over. So we're really going to be taking this pop-up around, these meetups.
Yeah, nothing gets out here in the West Coast that much. So if it comes to LA, I'm there. And I have property and stuff in Georgia. So Atlanta is a 4-hour meet. And I go to Georgia quite often. So I really want to hit one of these. I don't know. It's kind of taken by some of the stuff I saw on it, and I want to. But I'm an old cat, right? So I'm man,
we would love to have you, man.
Yeah, I know my personality too, right? I'm one of the guys in the room. Now I'll get on stage and I'll be all hyped up and I'll break stuff, but I'm the quiet guy in the back too. I watch everything. I've got that. I don't know, probably from the police days, but I got that quiet demeanor that is kind of watching and learning from afar. So, and I don't have a good group of dudes, to be honest with you. Sometimes, when you're in my position, that sounds so cocky, but I'm too much of a leader for everybody else. I don't have that one that I can call and say, hey, I'm going to choke the shit out of somebody right now.
Right.
So you got to put me in check. Okay. Because I'm about ready to go from zero to death row in a second.
Yeah.
So, I don't have much of that. And it's just like what you said too, it's men are so much like that. I know that I am.
Yeah.
I know that I can be that guy that, I don't know. Said when you ask me how I'm doing, I'm always doing good.
Right.
I'm good. Day's good. God's good.
Right.
Business good. Right. And then I hit the iron gym so I can hear the clang of the iron just going, man. And, being physical. And I think that's the other thing men need is some physicality, because without it, I just don't think it sharpens. It's something about iron sharpens iron, but it only sharpens when it's doing something. There's some kind of physicality that has to come with men. So I'm very interested in that. I'd like to do that one. I'd like to do another one with you, Doc, where we only talk about men's health. I'd like to get,
that'd be great.
I'd like to do that. And I'd like to do it at a time I know that I can get some other men to really listen. And I think it'd be really good if their wives had to listen to, because I don't think a lot of times, sometimes the wives understand how the men's thought process is, and really just how simple we are, even to the fact that don't ask me to do a million things at one time. Give me a task.
Yes.
Let me fulfill the task. When that task is done, babe, then I'm on to the next one. I'm good to go. Don't ask me to do 15 things in 5 minutes. Okay. I'm just not wired that way. Okay. So I'd like to do that again, Doc. This has been helpful for me, to be honest with you. These are things about my podcast all the time. I get these invaluable times. People spend thousands of dollars to spend this hour with you, and I get to do it through a podcast so that we can put it out there to people to know who you are. And my podcast is doing well right now. I just found out that I'm in that 10 percentile of the country right now, that this podcast.
That's awesome.
So, and it has to do with getting good quality guests on. And like you said, it's just like writing a book. It's funny. I wrote the book so just for that very thing. So my grandkids down the road can say, hey, this is what my grandpa thought or whatever.
Yes.
And I started the podcast for the same thing. Years and years from now, when I'm gone, this thing will lead on and they're going to say, hey, man, that's how my grandpa is. And I want to be honest with you, Doc. The reason I want to do another men's thing is I think men are so freaking weak right now.
Yeah.
Okay. That it boggles me. I see it in my youth, in my kids' youth in here, because the world is built on you go girl, girls got it, girl power.
Yes.
And then you're told that you're too masculine. You're you're toxic.
Yes.
Everything you do is toxic. And then listen, man, we're built to be a little toxic, bro. I don't know what to tell you. Okay. All right. And you want some toxic men around, because when you need them, you're going to want them. It's the men that are toxic that can control it is what you need. And I say this constantly, and I see it so much as an instructor now. I've done this for 40 years, and the newest ones that are coming on, I'm like, man, how you got brothers, and I'm like, how do you not know how to do a headlock on your brother? Do you guys wrestle at home at all?
Right.
Oh, no, we're not allowed to do any of that. We're not. What? I'm on the mat. I mean, I'm like, I don't have any hair to pull right now, but I was like, man, I can pull my freaking hair out right now.
Right.
And so I'd like to do that, because maybe I'm a little amiss too. I'm in that older generation. I'm on that Gen X or, baby boomer kind of right there on that pivotal point. But, I like to get after it, man. And
I would love to have you, come in and we really do that. My son too. He's a Taekwondo instructor. So.
Oh, here we go. That's awesome. Yeah. We'll have some same dirt. I know if he's an instructor, I know he feels this, because I talked to the instructors that's been around for a long time, that, hey man, we got to get our boys toughened up to be men, for crying out loud. This, I get it that you can express your feelings and do that, something that we didn't really do well, but that doesn't mean that you just roll over and die.
Right.
No way. You know what I mean? Just not going to have it. And to be honest with you, I don't care what they say. Your future wife wants you to be a man. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that was powerful for me. I need to hear that, because I don't have a lot of, and I don't open up to a lot of guys. I'll be real honest with you. I really don't. I really have to have some kind of a connection.
Yes.
Or I'll be real shut down, right? Because I guess it's just how I'm built, whether it's right or wrong, it just is. So, but I'd like to do that one more time, Doc. Maybe we can talk about that in the future here, where we can do just a, hey, listen, this one's it. We're gonna jump on something for the men. See, I got Ray here too. See Ray, this Ray right here. He's another one. He'd be listening to that right now. He's my tattoo guy.
Oh, really? Awesome.
Yeah, he's one of my tattoo guys. I got one or two of those. And by the way, they happened after 40 years old, after the divorce. And I got one little one on my back, and I said, I'll never sleeve my arms.
Same here. I got multiple. Mine just covered up, and they happened probably in my late 30s.
I told my tattoo artist, I said, no, I'm never going past this. And as soon as you do it, I'm sleeved. I can't even find any place to put them anymore. And Big Ray that's listening to right there, I'm a huge train fanatic, and people that know me, he's putting a massive locomotive on my back. My whole back is a train, and he's the one doing it. I got some good, strong men around that would like to hear this. So if you're up for that, Doc, I'd like to make another time that we can do it. Okay. And then let's promote your Heman Club and see what we can do. Because I'm telling you, that is something I can get men to come to, even on this mat. There's a few men here that I know I can get to do this stuff. So I'd like to dabble into that if you're up for that.
Definitely. I want to definitely talk to you about September too. I'd love you to come and break some bricks at the He-Man's conference in Miami.
September is a pretty good month, dude. I don't have a lot going on in September because all the black belt tests and stuff's done. So that's something I might be able to do. Where's that one going to be?
It's going to be in Miami, the 26th and 28th.
So what I might do, maybe I'll fly into to Savannah, and I'll do some seminars there at the school, and then I'll take a plane flight from Savannah over, and then we'll do that into Miami.
That'd be great, man. I'd love you to be a part of this.
Yeah.
Because the theme this year is going to be the construction site. So basically, I'll say this. I've learned this as a man, no matter where I am. For example, the pinnacle of my last level is still the basement of my new one. The pinnacle of my last level is still the basement of my new one. And I was talking to some guys, and I was telling them at the pop-up that we were at, I was like, life is a construction site. It's a never-ending construction site. Even when you're 60, 70, I'm 47. When I get 60, I'm still going to be on a construction site that's different from my 47. Now, you look around us, they're always building. You would think, oh, man, don't we got enough hotels? But there's always another hotel. There's always something else under construction. And as men, we're always under construction. And so that's what this whole thing about this theme of this year is going to be. Still with the mud, like, hey, let's build. Let's build on each other. Let's build on ourselves. And I like what you said about that, because there's an attack against masculinity, period, these days. It's an attack against masculinity. And so you, like you said, if I'm masculine, I'm toxic, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If I stand for something, then, you know what I'm saying, I'm too stern. I'm over azaleas. So it's really being a place where that's what we're celebrating, and this is masculinity, being men, different. We don't all have to agree, but at the end of the day, we're men, and so that's what we're talking. So I would love, man, to have you come in.
Yeah,
do that.
I think I tell you, that's one thing I tell everybody too. Men are men, and they usually, this whole race thing and all the other kind of stuff. And I'm telling you, man, men are being attacked. Okay, and they are what they are, and and having other strong guys around to build them up. That's what we need. Sounds like that's I met the man that does it. So I appreciate you, Doc. I don't want to keep you longer, man. I know I've already kept you over a little bit of time.
I enjoyed this.
I appreciate your time so much, and we'll get another one of those going for sure. All right.
Definitely, Mark. I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
You too, man. You have a good night.
You've been listening to Real Talk with Mark Cox. Real life, real topics, real conversation. We're passionate about motivation, fitness, self-defense, weight loss, and coming at it from a real angle. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. And we hope you had fun. We know we did. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit us up on Instagram and Facebook at MarkCox100. Make sure to subscribe and review. And tell a friend or two about the show. For